Welcome to another deep dive. You know I love when you all send in cool stuff, and these fables you sent are no joke.
Fables, huh?
Yeah, and get this, they're supposed to be from an owl, like Aesop, but with feathers.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of fables are we talking about?
Well, the ones that really caught my eye all have this theme of wisdom,
Yeah.
you know, like the benefits and risks of gaining it or giving it.
So some owl wisdom to ponder.
Exactly, and the first one is the owl and the field mouse. What struck you about that one?
I mean, it's pretty ironic, right? You've got this mouse totally trusting the owl, assuming it's getting good advice.
And bam, that trust leads straight to, well,
Yeah, not exactly the outcome you'd expect when you're seeking wisdom.
did that ending surprise you at all?
I think it really drives home the moral of the story, which is
Some advice comes with a price.
exactly. And that price isn't always obvious up front. It makes you think, what could that price be if this wasn't just a story, but like real life?
Okay, yeah. Besides, ending up as dinner, what else could the mouse have lost?
Well, on a basic level, it lost its vulnerability, right? Put its
Hmm.
faith in the owl, and that backfired big time.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's like anytime we follow advice, we're taking a risk. Could be wasted time, a hit to your reputation, or even missing out on something better because you were on the wrong track.
Follow the wrong guru. You end up in the wrong cave, as they say.
Huh, exactly. And sometimes the guru, like in this case the owl, has ulterior motives. The advice might sound good, but it only benefits them, not you.
So, it's a reminder for all of us. Don't blindly follow advice, even if it comes from someone who seems wise. Gotta look deeper.
Always question the motivation behind it, you know. Do your own research. Don't just take things at face value.
Speaking of appearances, our next fable is The Mirror and the Crow. This one's all about how we see ourselves. We've got this crow completely obsessed with its reflection.
Oh, I know this type. All about those Instagram filters, right?
Exactly. But then the mirror does something wild. It shows what's underneath all that, like the skeletal truth beneath the pretty feathers.
Kind of a harsh reality check.
The moral of the story is, true beauty reveals more than we wish to see. What do you think that means, like in the bigger picture?
Well, I think it's pushing us to look past surface appearances, both in ourselves and others. That crow was so caught up in looking good that it missed or ignored a deeper truth.
And that's so easy to do, especially these days. It's like we're bombarded with images, and it's easy to get swept up in that surface level.
But real wisdom is seeing the whole picture, right? Good, bad, even the skeletal stuff we might not want to face.
Totally. And that takes guts, right? To look at the parts of ourselves we might want to hide.
It can be uncomfortable for sure, but to grow, you gotta face those less than beautiful parts.
It's like that quote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Avoiding the tough stuff just keeps us stuck.
Couldn't agree more. Without that self-awareness, building wisdom is like trying to build a house without a foundation.
Great analogy. Okay, ready for another dose of owl wisdom? The Candle and the Moth is up next. All about that temptation, mistaking temporary comfort for something real.
Ooh, yeah, this one's vivid. The moth, so drawn to that light, yearning for that warmth. But the candle itself warns the moth. It's like, don't confuse my warmth for kindness.
That line. It's like the candle's trying to protect the moth, even though the moth's going straight for danger.
Totally. And the moral hits hard. Some warmth is meant only to be watched. Like, not all things that seem good are good for us, you know?
Oh, for sure. It's like risky behaviors, addictions, even relationships that seem great at first but turn out to be toxic.
So many examples. Have you ever fallen for something that looked good but turned out to be harmful?
Yeah. I think we've all been there at some point, right?
Right.
Like that saying, all that glitters isn't gold. The things that tempt us most might be the ones we need to watch out for.
It's a classic trap, isn't it? We get so focused on what seems good in the moment, we miss the bigger picture.
And that's where wisdom comes in, right? It's like having that ability to look past the immediate and see the potential consequences.
Yeah, being able to pause and ask, is this really nourishing or is this going to burn me?
That's a powerful question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
All right, let's shift gears a bit. The Carpenter and the Tree, this one takes us beyond personal choices and into a wider perspective, don't you think?
Definitely. It's all about those unintended consequences, especially when it comes to nature. You've got the carpenter only seeing the tree as lumber, what he can build, what he can create. That's all he cares about.
But he ends up removing something vital, right?
Mm-hmm.
The moral is, removing what seems useless may leave a void. And it really makes you think about how everything's connected.
It's like he's so focused on what he's gaining, he doesn't see what's being lost. The whole ecosystem is affected.
That domino effect. One little action can spiral out, causing consequences you never even imagined.
And that's why wisdom is so important, understanding those connections, seeing that even things that seem useless actually play a huge role.
It makes me think about the environment, how we keep taking resources without thinking about the long-term impact. It's
Yeah.
like we're all operating with that carpenter mindset.
It is a bit sobering when you think about it that way. Like, we need a bigger perspective, one that understands how everything fits together, a perspective based in wisdom.
Okay, ready for our last fable? The fisherman and the starfish. This one feels the most open to interpretation, wouldn't you say?
For sure. This one sticks with you, leaves you with more questions than answers. So the fisherman comes across this beach, just covered in starfish, and his first instinct is to help get them back in the water.
But there are just so many. It's like a metaphor for all the suffering in the world, you know? How can you possibly fix it all?
And that's where that moral comes in. Acts of kindness can awaken what lies dormant. It's pretty deep. What does that mean to you?
Well, part of me thinks it's a warning about good intentions gone wrong. Like maybe the fisherman's messing with a natural process. Those starfish might have been meant to be there.
Right. Even with the best of intentions, we can create unexpected ripples.
But then there's that other side. The power of compassion, even when it feels pointless. Even if he can't save them all, his actions matter to the ones he does reach.
You can't do everything, but you can do something. And sometimes that something can inspire others to act, to awaken their own compassion.
Exactly. It's a ripple effect, but of kindness this time. This fable really makes you think about the impact we have, big or small, and how our actions can influence others.
It all comes down to intention, right? Facing every situation with both compassion and wisdom.
So we've explored 5 fables, each with its own unique take on wisdom. What do you think ties them all together? What's the big message the owl is trying to give us?
I think it's realizing that wisdom is a journey, not a destination. You don't just suddenly become wise. It takes time, experience, reflection, and most importantly, being okay with things not being black and white.
It's like the owl is saying, here's a taste, but the real learning happens out there in the messiness of life.
Exactly. These fables are like little guides pointing us in the right direction. It's up to us to actually walk the path, make mistakes, learn, and figure out what wisdom means for ourselves.
And that journey is going to be different for everyone, right? There's no one-size-fits-all wisdom.
Totally. It's about what clicks with you, what works in your life. And it never really ends.
Like building your own wisdom library, always adding new books, new insights, and maybe even writing a few chapters of our own to share with others. So what sticks with you from these fables? What piece of owl wisdom will you carry with you?
For me, it's that reminder to look deeper, question what you think you know, and embrace the complexity of things. Wisdom isn't about having all the answers, it's about asking the right questions.
And that brings us back to the beginning. If the owl offered you advice, would you take it? Knowing what we know now, it's a tough one.
It really is, because the owl's wisdom isn't about simple solutions. It's about understanding that every choice has an impact, and real wisdom is navigating those choices mindfully and intentionally.
So maybe the real gift isn't the advice itself, but the ability to figure out which advice to follow. Like the owl saying, here are some tools, now go make your own path.
I love that. And that path, like for those fable characters, might be bumpy. We might face temptations, tough decisions, even our own ego getting in the way.
But those bumps are how we learn, how we grow, how we each find our own kind of wisdom.
That's a great way to put it, our own kind of wisdom. Because there's no one right way to be wise.
It's about what fits your values, your experiences, who you want to be. And just like the owl used stories, we can find wisdom everywhere. In books, conversations, nature, even our mistakes.
Absolutely. Every experience, good or bad, can teach us something. It's about paying attention, thinking about what happened, and finding those little nuggets of wisdom along the way.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this thought. What wisdom will you take from this? What really stuck with you from these fables?
And how are you going to use it? In your relationships, your work, how you interact with the world.
A huge thank you to you, our listener, for sending in these fables. We had a blast exploring them with you. Hope it sparked some new ideas, maybe even inspired you to find your own sources of wisdom.
Remember, the journey never really ends. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
Until next time, stay curious. It's amazing how these simple stories can pack such a punch, right?
I know. It's like each fable is a little world of wisdom, and we've just been on this whirlwind tour of them.
It all comes back to that question, though. If the owl offered you advice now, would you take it?
Honestly, I'd be a lot more cautious than that mouse.
Right. No blindly trusting this time.
Exactly. But I wouldn't just dismiss it outright either. I'd listen, weigh the pros and cons, all that.
So the real lesson isn't never trust an owl. It's about being discerning, figuring out which advice is worth following.
It's like the owl's giving us a toolkit, not a set of instructions. We got to choose the right tools for the job.
And sometimes that means making mistakes along the way, like the carpenter or the fisherman.
Oh, for sure. But even those mistakes can teach us something, right? It's all part of that messy journey of figuring out what wisdom means for each of us.
And that's what makes these fables so cool. They don't give you easy answers. They make you think, make you question.
They're more like conversation starters than lectures. Like the owl's throwing out these ideas, and it's up to us to wrestle with them, see what clicks.
So as we wrap up, I'm curious, what will you take away from this deep dive? What piece of owl wisdom resonated with you?
And how will you use it? In your everyday life, your relationships, how you see the world.
We had so much fun exploring these fables with you. Thanks again for sending them in.
Keep those curious minds working, keep questioning, keep exploring.
Until next time, folks, stay wise out there.